Those greedy self-entitled, never to be sufficiently damned Blekel. Worthless corporate reproductive organ-licking vacuum suckers. I hope they rot in the deepest depths of the coldest singularity in the multiverse. Captain Vok of the independent merchant vessel Krieger, a name that translated roughly to the big one in galactic standard, a bet in the form of a pun, raged at the sales beings he had just left behind. The captain had an excellent grasp of invective and could go on for quite a while without repeating himself. The stream had just gotten to the point of describing the questionable reproductive habits of all retailers when he spotted the ship engineer poking his head through a hatch. "Didn't get the parts?" the human, Mel Andersmith, asked. Mel was generally a good engineer. They had picked him up at a port a few cycles back and Vok couldn't fault his work. Wherever a problem cropped up, Mel was there. The man even managed to get the ever-present smell of rust out of the forward environmental plant. Still, he had some odd habits. A great deal of the human's pay went towards small beans he made into a dark broth and consumed at the start of every shift. Then Mel would always wear those eye-searingly garish garments when off duty. And his musical tastes were best left unspoken of. But the human engineer, Andersmith, had done excellent work in the past. Never without parts though. No. Oh, they had them. The pseudo-avian captain spat. But they wanted 40 kilo credits for a single third-stage containment field generator. "We're not even going to make that much delivering this cargo. And it's our biggest in months." Vok was starting to get worked up again. Their ship had been a victim of a string of bad deals recently. In fact, the reason he had hired a human engineer in the first place was the Accardian who previously held the position simply demanded too much pay. While nowhere near as precise or experienced, at least Mel was cheap and competent. But if they couldn't get the ship moving in 5 millicycles, no one would be getting paid. Yeah. Kind of expected something like that. Pick up any of the other stuff I asked for though. The human had sent along an extensive shopping list. Aside from the field generators, the rest had been relatively cheap. A few tools, some standard replacement parts, and other miscellaneous engineering implements. "Sent a bot for this stuff," Captain Vok replied. "All except for item 7. No one had ever heard of whatever that stuff is." As they spoke, an autonomous pallet glided through the corridor, piled with the purchases. "Damn," the human cursed. "Could have used it for what I'm going to need to do. Now, think you can order me field generator for a YT-1300 light freighter? Those aren't going for more than 800 credits, if I remember right." "Possibly," the captain temporized. "But how will that help? The software is incompatible to begin with, and it's not like the fields are all that close in dimensions." "Oh, just leave it all to me, sir. This is going to be a challenge, but I'll have this baby running in the end." The captain sighed. Another thing about this human engineer he couldn't understand. It would constantly refer to the ship as a small child or a young female or occasionally a derogatory epithet for a hunting animal from its homeworld. But if he could get the ship fixed, he'd let it slide. "Fine. Just get this done. We can't afford to lose our cargo now." "Of course, Cap. On the job." "What is that banging?" was the muzzy thought that went through Vok's mind. According to the wall chrono, it was less than 30 microcycles since he had fallen asleep, and it had been a very taxing shift. Then the captain felt a jolt as he realized the noise was coming from engineering. "Oh, Kihep, is that featherless Drek destroying the ship?" He bolted out of bed and dressed quickly. And things had been looking so good, Vok thought. With the older model field generator in possession, Smith had stripped the old system out and taken it apart. Cannibalizing, the human said it was, as he transferred bits and pieces from one to the other. Then he had downloaded some software from some hypernode called the Brigand Port and installed it in the new systems. Mel said something about someone releasing a cracked and DRM-free version of the containment field generator firmware that was compatible with most ships. Or something like that. Vok couldn't really follow the technical babble. Now, it sounded like this insane primate had killed them all. It only took a moment to reach engineering from the captain's quarters. Pausing just outside of the hatch, Captain Vok took a deep breath and prepared himself for the hellish prospect beyond. Instead, what he saw as the heavy metal swung inwards was a fairly normal scene. Smith was even there in corner, bent over the access panel for the third stage containment field generator. On closer inspection though, the human was swinging something. It almost looked like, "What are you doing to my ship?" Vok screeched. Mel quickly turned around and set down the massive mallet he had clutched in his grip. "Sorry, I woke you, sir," he said sheepishly. "The generator's dimensions are just a bit off, so it needed some extra force to get seated. Though, I think the last one got it in." Smith leaned over and typed a command in a terminal nearby and then stood. "Yep, we're actually showing 108% normal field efficiency. They made this model for a slightly higher power engine, and I made some tweaks. But you were hitting it with that thing." Inside, the captain was a bit impressed. He had hoped, but hadn't actually expected this man to get the engine working. Still, he was beating on his ship. It was the principle of the thing. Well, these generators are designed to stand a gradient of 1200 gravities per meter. A little whack isn't going to do more than scratch the finish. Besides, Mel continued with a grin, "I was just following the first rule of engineering. If it doesn't work, you're not using a big enough hammer." A tenth of a cycle had passed since Captain Vok of the IMV Krieger had found Smith applying the human interpretation of the first rule of engineering. They were still in space, and the fix was in place and operating at better than maximum efficiency. With the cargo delivered on time, he could afford to pay the crew. And the 3 jobs after that had kept things going smoothly. In fact, things were looking better than they had in a long time. After seeing the new parts in action, the captain had to admit that, while the method of insertion was unorthodox, it worked well. So well that he had made a point to scour the next few ports until he found the missing item 7 from the engineer's list. It had been kind of scary to see the human's eye light up like that when he passed over a stack of short gray cylinders. But what was even more disturbing was that the man had muttered something about an alternate first rule. But no, it couldn't be that bad, he thought to himself. How nasty could something called duct tape be? Author's name and the link to original text is in the description. Consider tapping the thumbs up and pressing the subscribe button if you enjoyed this video.